Okay, Year 11, now you've had the chance to look at the mock exam and the qualities of responses that did really well and the pitfalls that some answers fell into which stopped them getting the marks that they could have had. You're ready to apply this to a new text, because it's important that you've now developed those skills, because you will be tested on these skills with an unseen text. So forget Zoe and the avalanche now. This is about the skills that you learnt from doing that and applying that to a brand new text. So let's just quickly remind ourselves of what this paper looks like and how it's all mapped out. So 5 questions. Remember, we'll start with number 5, the writing question, which is worth half of your marks, and then we will work through the reading questions 1, 2, 3, 4 in sequential order. We are going to do this as a bit of a walking talking mock Year 11. So for each question, I'm going to remind you how to do it and what the key feedback from the mock exams was, and then you'll need to pause the video and have a go at answering the question. So we're going to start off with question number 5, which, as I've said, is the descriptive or narrative writing task, worth 40 marks. You are marked on your ability to communicate, your ability to organise your ideas into paragraphs, and also thinking about the overall shape of your text, the sequence of ideas that are in there. Your vocabulary, so be ambitious with that vocabulary. Use ambitious vocabulary. Use upgraded sentence structures, and then be as accurate as you can with your spelling and your punctuation. Think too about the range of your punctuation, and that's where the upgraded sentences really come into play, because if you use a triple noun colon, for example, then you've used sentence structure and punctuation there really effectively. So it's win-win. Okay. Here's the task then for this new paper. Remember, the resources for this are all, as well as being on this screen. I appreciate that's a little bit small for you to probably see. So they are on the Firefly task page so that you can have a look at the PDF with the questions and the tasks and everything as well. So this is, you're being asked to either write a description or write a story in this instance. So you were being asked to either write a description of a stormy sea suggested by this picture. That word suggested is important, and we'll come back to that. Or you're writing a story that begins with the sentence, "This was going to be a terrible day, one of those days when it's best to stay in bed because everything is going to turn out bad." And your 40 marks are divided between 24 marks for content and organisation and 16 marks for your technical accuracy. Let's just remind ourselves of the key points from that mock feedback, so the little examiner's report that you read with each question. So remember that planning tended to lead to better writing. I think sometimes people worry that they haven't got enough time, so don't want to give time to something like planning. But even though your planning isn't marked, it will make the piece of writing better and therefore get you a higher mark. The best responses that we read tend to focus on powerful atmosphere rather than being factual in their description. The best responses are also quite simple but really crafted. So don't overcomplicate plots. Avoid the cliches of "it was all a dream" or really fantastical, far-fetched plots with fairies and unicorns, or thinking of ones that I've read in the past of radioactive frogs, or where people have tried to rehash the plot of Jumanji in 2 sides of A4. Doesn't work. Go for crafted, go for simple. Keep your plot straightforward. And that crafting comes from your sentence variety. That makes a huge difference to the marks that are awarded. So using those upgraded sentences, which we'll look at in a second, and make sure that you paragraph your text. Remember, if you forget to do it, go back and put where you want the paragraph breaks to be, and you'll get the marks as if they'd been there all along. Okay, it's more important that you use them than that your work looks kind of pretty and unedited. It's better to put them in. So here are those upgraded sentence structures that I was just referring to. You've seen these before in the mock feedback, but you've seen them lots of times Year 11 in your lessons throughout Year 10 and Year 11. So there are 8 structures round the outside that you could have a go at using. And what I'd suggest you do is, once you've decided which task it is you're going to do, whether it's the description based on the stormy sea image, or whether it's the story, the one about the person having the worst day, today was going to be an awful day. Once you've decided which one you're going to do, write all 8, use all 8 upgraded structures, and then incorporate those into your writing. If you choose to do the write a description task based on the image, remember that it did say suggested by the image in the task. So you can change details here. It's you're being inspired by the picture. They're not going to, if you decide, actually, I want this description, to be nighttime, and I want it to be raining, but then I want the sun to come out, You can make that detail up, that's fine. It's purely suggested by the image, not, you know, you're not being asked to write a factual description of this picture. There is a difference. So you're focusing on atmosphere. Now, I did say that planning is really important, and you can see we've shown you how to divide up your time. 5 minutes planning, 35 minutes writing, 5 minutes checking at the end. Now, if you're doing this with the image, one way that you could plan would be to draw a line through the image, with the idea then being that your description follows that route. So you draw a line and you number the points to show where you'll focus and in what order you'll focus on them. Now that line there's just got 3 points on it as an example, but I'd recommend that you do about 6 so that you've got enough to write about, and really focus on precise details, really zoom in. So for example, point number 1 could start with the lighthouse on the top of the cliff edge, and describing the building and describing the detail of it, and then maybe describing how the light from the lighthouse scans across, so follows that line across to where the number 2 is, and that light, how it'll scan and almost paint the edge of the cliff with light. You can then follow the line down into number 3, where you've got the water crashing up onto the rocks and the spray. You could then perhaps move over for point number 4 onto those jagged rocks. And one of the best examples of a response to this task was a one where somebody almost described it like a war, a battle between the firm rocks and then the dynamic water. But have a go and see which one you think. The other choice of task that you've obviously got is to write a story. Now, if you do write a story, I am going to repeat my point from earlier. Keep it really straightforward. Don't overcomplicate your narrative, because you don't have time within 35 minutes of writing to do an epic story. And please don't rehash films that you've seen, because again, that stands out. We pick that up really quickly, and it's hard to then take it seriously as a piece of original writing. Use the narrative triangle that you use for question number 3 to help you think about how it's going to start. What's your exposition going to be? A description of setting or character. Build up simply with some rising action, bring in a sense of maybe danger or a sense of tension or uncertainty, and then what's the key event, that climactic moment. And as with the question 3, when you look at it, you don't have to do the whole triangle, so you maybe don't have time within the scope of this task to do falling action and denouement, so you could leave it hanging at the point of the climax. But think really methodically about your structure and where your plot's going to go, rather than, as I say, doing something that lacks originality or that is overcomplicated. So if you're going to do whichever of the tasks you choose to do, you need to now have a go at doing the task. So we recommend that you spend 5 minutes planning, then up to 35 minutes writing. If you're short of time in this lesson, make it 25, and then 5 minutes checking your work really carefully for accuracy. Okay, pause the video and off you go. Now that you've completed the writing section, you've got half of the marks in the bag now. You've done 40 out of the 80 marks of this paper. And now we're going to look at the reading section, so questions 1 to 4, so explorations in creative reading. And remember, we follow the sequence of the questions here, question 1, 2, 3 and 4. This all starts, obviously, with reading the text. So the title of this text that you're going to have a look at, it's City of the Beasts, and it's by the writer Isabel Allende. And if you have a little think about what the connotations of that title are, what does city suggest, but then equally the fact that there's beasts, maybe you've got expectations of threat or danger, so something a little bit sinister perhaps suggested by that title. There is a little blurb, and it does tell you, and often people skip past this because they're worried about time, but do read it because it's really important. It tells the story of 15-year-old Alex Cold and his family. So already you know that this story is about a teenager. So that might shape your expectations about the type of things that might be going on in his life, what a 15-year-old's perspective on something is going to be, rather than a young child or an adult. You are also told that Alex Cold lives with his parents and 2 younger sisters, Andrea and Nicole, in a small American town. But when his mother becomes ill, family life changes beyond recognition. Right, so you now know what the big tension point in this story is going to be, that this is a family who are living in a really difficult situation because their mum is really ill. So you can start to empathise with Alex and recognise some of the emotions that he'll be going through. So you've got some predictions now, some expectations of what you'll see when you start to look at the story. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to just pause the video and then just read the text, read it through from start to finish, once through, and then come back to the video and press play when you're ready. Now, even though the text will be unfamiliar to you, the questions that you are going to answer always follow that pattern that we know from the paper structure. So you know what to look for as you read. So you've had a quick read through the text just to be familiar with it. Now read it through a little bit more carefully, but this time try and spot things that will help you answer the questions. So, for example, question 1 is going to ask you to look at lines 1 to 5. So what I'd suggest you do, because again, in the panic of an exam, sometimes people miss out or skim past those important details, draw a box around lines 1 to 5 so that you don't risk going outside them. And you've been asked to identify 4 things about the bird in Alex's nightmare from that part of the source. So as you read it through for this time, you could pick those out, highlight them, underline them in the text. Question 2 is going to ask you about the writer's use of language, and it's in that specific extract. So you're looking from lines 6 to 11. Again, you could box that off in the text, and you've been asked how the writer uses language here to describe the effects of the storm. So you're looking for writer's methods, but you're also looking at what the effect of the storm is. So you know what you're looking for there, and that's going to be for question 2, that 8-mark question. Question 3, you know you're looking at the whole of the source. It reminds you that this text is taken from the beginning of a novel, and another one from the mock paper was as well. They're not always, so just be aware of that. And you're being asked, how is the text structured to interest you as a reader? So when you're reading through it again, can you identify the exposition? Can you identify some rising action, another piece of rising action, and then what's the climax? And then for question 4, you're looking from line 16 to the end. A student has said, this part of the story set during breakfast time shows that Alex is struggling to cope with his mother's illness. To what extent do you agree? So as you read, look for evidence that shows how Alex is dealing with his mother's illness, maybe signs that he is struggling with it. And just through that read through and helping to identify some of the quotations and examples that you want to use, that does some of the thinking for you, so that when you come to answer the questions, you're ready to go straight away. Right, so you've read the text, you're familiar with it, and you've identified some of the key features that you are going to want to include in your answers to questions 1 to 4. This video is going to end in a second, and then there will be a follow-up one that will walk you through questions 1, 2, 3 and 4 in turn, again giving you that opportunity to practice applying those skills. So if you move on to the next video, it'll pick up where this one leaves off. Thank you.